Hi, my name is Elle and I'm the artist and designer behind Chaos Kittens and Crafting, and welcome to my cross stitch tutorial series. Today we're going to be covering cross-stitch supplies. So what supplies do I need to get started? The nice thing about cross-stitching is that cost-wise, it is very scalable. It can be as cheap or as expensive as you want it to be. With $20 to $25, you can get everything you need to get started and still have some extra supplies left over for future projects. But if you want to put more money into supplies as you get better and learn your preferences, there are a ton of tools that you can look into down the road. For now, let's start with the absolute necessities. Quick and dirty, you're going to need a pattern, fabric, floss, and a needle. So first things first, we're going to need a pattern. Elle, I don't even know how to stitch and you want me to know what I'm gonna stitch already. Don't worry, I've got you covered. I made a free sampler pattern that is going to go along with this tutorial series, and I have it linked down below so you can download it and we can stitch it together. So this is what the sampler pattern is going to look like when we are completely done with it. Now, I will say, I made color choices on here. You are going to have a lot of freedom with this pattern. This pattern is going to be about skills building, so the color choice is largely going to be up to you from that point. If you do not like my sampler pattern and you would prefer to stitch something else, that is totally fine. My advice for choosing your first pattern to stitch is twofold. So my first thing is choose something small. The reason is that you will get a lot of dopamine from seeing a pattern come together very quickly, and it will help keep you encouraged to continue on with the pattern. My exception to that is point two. If you have a pattern or you know of something that you want to stitch that you're really, really excited about, honestly, that's more important than the size of your first pattern. Because if it's something that you're very excited about, you want to see it finished, maybe it's from a fandom that you like or something like that, you're going to be more excited to continue working on it, even if you're not super crazy about cross stitch. So it's kind of a balancing act. You know yourself best. Do you want a smaller project that's going to finish up quickly just in case you don't end up liking cross stitch, but you know you're going to want to finish the piece regardless? Or do you want a larger project that you're going to really want to finish even if you don't end up liking cross stitch? Now, I'm of course hoping that you love cross stitch and that you want to stick with it. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm going to be teaching you all of this. But I do understand that a lot of people try things out and they decide that that craft isn't for them. I am a hobby jumper. I have tried so many different crafting things. And so having a craft that is a pretty low bar as far as monetary access to it, like I said, $20, $25 can get you everything you need to get started with this craft. And then you can grow from there. That's always a big plus for me. And then if I try something out and I decide, hey, that wasn't for me, I feel like I haven't spent a lot of time and energy and money into this craft that it turns out isn't for me. And so that's okay. But with that said, feel free to poke around the internet. There are a lot of cheap patterns out there. There are also a lot of free patterns out there. So if you just want something to get started and try, like I said, this is a free pattern that you can stitch along with me and practice all of the skills I'm going to be talking about over the tutorial series. And if you really don't like this and you want to try something else, go for it. You can still practice a lot of those skills with whatever pattern that you're going to be using. Now, I will say not all of the skills that I am teaching are going to be transferable to every pattern. In fact, I would say there are probably very few patterns that are going to include all of the skills that I'm going to be teaching. I would venture to say there are probably none, and that's because this sampler is designed to teach you so many different skills. So this center column is where we're going to be starting. I'm going to be teaching 5 different starting methods and 3 different ending methods. Over here on the right-hand column, we're going to be talking about the number of strands of floss you choose to stitch with. So we're going to be stitching with all of the different numbers. and you can get a feel for them and see how they look and see how they feel. Over here on the left-hand side, we're going to be doing 3 different methods for color blending, and then we're going to dive into quarter stitches. Some people think that these are half stitches. These are actually called tent or continental stitches. And then down here, we're going to be doing actual half stitches and 3/4 stitches, which is 2 half stitches together, but they are stitched just a little bit differently. We're also going to be covering French knots, which if you've ever done embroidery, you're probably familiar with French knots. Over here, we're going to be doing 3 different methods for adding beads to your cross stitch projects. And then lastly, we're going to be doing back stitching for the title and the edging around it. So like I said, we are going to be covering a lot of different skills with this very small sampler pattern. So I am hoping that you guys like it. I'm very excited. But yeah, as far as fabric is concerned, let's talk about fabric. Cross stitching is usually done on Aida cloth. I have also heard it pronounced as Aida cloth or Aida cloth. So you may hear different pronunciations if you follow different content creators or different tutorials, things like that, but it's all the same stuff. It comes in different counts. And what that means is how many stitches per inch you're going to get. So as you can see, it has holes in it already, the way that it's woven. And so those holes are where we're going to be putting our stitches through. So the most commonly used and easiest to find cloth is going to be 14 count. And that means we're going to have 14 stitches per inch. So if you have a 1-inch square, it's going to be 14 inches across and 14 stitches across and 14 stitches up and down per inch of fabric. So for this sampler pattern that we're going to be working on, I recommend at least a 7-inch by 7-inch square of Aida cloth. So that is what I have right here. As you can see, the sampler pattern is going to fit very nicely on here. We do want to make sure that we have a little bit of excess fabric on each side of our pattern. That way, no matter how we decide to finish this off, whether we put it in a hoop like I've done here, if you want to put it in a picture frame, if you want to turn it into a pillow, whatever it is that you're going to do with your piece when you're finished with it, you want to make sure that you have some extra fabric to work with around the edges of your piece. So like I said, a 7-inch square is perfect for this particular pattern if you are working on 14 count. There are other counts of fabric. If you want larger stitches that are a little bit easier to see, might be a little bit easier to work as you're just getting started, you might want to look at 11 count fabric. Again, the count refers to how many stitches per inch you're getting. So a smaller number means larger stitches. You'll get 11 stitches per inch. If you want smaller, more delicate stitches, you can bump up to 18 count or 24 count Aida cloth. You could absolutely go crazy and go with 28 count, which means your finished product would only be, you know, itty bitty little thing because it's twice as many stitches per inch in each direction. I would recommend working with 14 count or 11 count as you're getting started. So that is what I'm going to recommend. This is what we're going to be stitching the pattern on together as we go. This is just a sample that I mocked up ahead of time so you could see what our finished product can look like, but I am going to be restitching it with you over the course of the tutorial series. The third thing that you're going to need is floss. DMC floss is the most widely recognized brand of embroidery floss as far as popularity goes. And there are some reasons for that. It is an old company that has been around for decades at this point. And they're very, very good. The quality is very good. Their color matching, even across dye lots, is fantastic. This is a high quality brand. With that being said, it's actually not super, super expensive. I think skeins run like 70 to 80 cents per skein in most craft stores, and they come in over 500 different colors. So when you're looking for that amount of, you know, variability and what you're able to do with these, DMC tends to be where people sit with their brand preference for embroidery and for cross stitch. There are some other brands as well. Anchor is probably the second most common. I have not found Anchor in stores, but I do know it is available online, and I do know that depending on where you are in the world, Anchor might be the brand that you are able to find easier. If you cannot find DMC and your pattern calls for DMC, there are online conversion charts to tell you which number or which color to get in Anchor if your pattern calls for a specific color in DMC. So there are some conversion charts on there for you on the internet that you can find if you need that. With that being said, how do you know what colors to get? Every pattern should come with a color chart. And so this is what mine looks like. So on the side, you will see here the different symbols that are being used in the pattern. It tells you here we are looking at DMC brand, and then it tells you the color numbers to get. My chart also includes the quote unquote the name of the color. So it's sort of a description of the color, just so you can make sure that you're not, like, if you're supposed to be buying a pink, that you don't walk away with a green on accident because you accidentally flip some of the numbers or something like that. And lastly, I like to include the stitch count. So how many stitches of each color you'll be using in the pattern. That's helpful for me to be able to sort of eyeball and figure out if I have enough of that color at home to do this pattern, or if I should pick up more when I go to the store. If you're just getting started, don't worry about that right now. Just worry about looking down this list and getting the colors that are listed. Now, like I said, this pattern is extremely flexible. So you can actually do this pattern with a minimum of 2 colors, and that's because we are going to be doing some color blending. I recommend at least 4 because we are going to be doing quarter stitches, and I think that it's best to do those and to be able to look back at this with 4 separate colors. I wrote the pattern with 6 colors in mind. So I grabbed some skeins that are not exact to the colors that I used on this one, but that are pretty close. So instead of black, I have a dark gray. This isn't the same color of green, but it's close. Not the same purple or pink, but they're close. Not the same red, but it's close. And not the same blue either. So none of these colors are exactly the ones that I used on the original pattern, but these are what I had in loose skeins to show you what these look like. The last thing that you're going to need is going to be a needle. Now, these needles usually come in multi-packs. This is the last one I have in this pack. This was originally a 4-pack. Usually these are going to have 4, 6, 10 in a single package. I happened to buy the gold-plated ones this time because I was doing some testing. The nickel ones or the silver ones, those work just as well. The only thing you're going to want to look at is the size of the needle that you're going to be using. So you want the needle to be small enough that you're not going to be stretching out the holes a lot when you're stitching. Because we are going to be doing a little bit of beadwork on this pattern, you do want to make sure that the eye of the needle is going to fit through the beads that you choose. But other than that, it really is up to you what size and length that you like for your needles. I would recommend starting out with probably a 26, size 26 or number 26 needle. That's what I have right here. These have been working pretty good for me. If you need something a little bigger, go with a 24. Again, smaller number, bigger needle. These are gauges. So just like you would be buying like jewelry wire or things like that, the smaller the number, the larger the size. 28s are also great. I usually buy whatever they have in stock or whatever's on sale when I need to pick up new needles. You will want to buy a package of them, not just a single needle, unless you already have one lying around your house. If you have like a little sewing needle or something like that, that'll work just great. You don't need to go out and buy anything fancy, but if you are picking up a package, make sure you buy a multi-pack. Chances are you're probably gonna lose 1 or 2 or several over time. So just having some backups so you don't have to run to the store all the time is always great. Now, if you are going to be following along and doing this sampler pattern, like I said, we are going to be adding beads. This is not a normal thing that gets added to cross-stitching patterns. This is considered a specialty stitch, as is the French knots, the back stitches, and some of these stitches that we'll be covering later. So if that's something that you're not crazy about, you don't want to do the beads, you don't have to. But if you do want to learn how to add beads to your project, I would recommend picking up a tube of beads. I think a size 10 or 11. So usually it's written as 11/0 or 10/0 of seed beads is going to be perfect for this project. You do not have to go get a whole bunch of crazy colors or anything like that. 1 tube should be good. They also do make tubes that are multicolored. So if you do want more than 1 color, but you don't want to have to go buy a bunch of individual ones, look for a tube like this where there's a bunch of different colors in there and you can kind of sort them out and decide how you want to place them on your piece. I used 6 different colors because I wanted to make a rainbow and because I have a bunch of seed beads lying around, and so I wanted to play around with color. I really like color. But like I said, the beads are not strictly necessary if you are just going to be doing cross stitching, and certainly not if you're going to be following a different pattern unless that pattern specifically calls for beads. Lastly, something that I didn't mention before, because I assume that you probably have this at home already, but you are going to need a pair of scissors. I like to use really sharp, tiny little bitty scissors. This is going to be for cutting your floss and things like that, but you can definitely use a larger normal pair of scissors. Whatever you've got at home is going to be perfect for this. There are definitely some optional supplies that, while they're not strictly necessary for you to do cross stitch at all, and certainly not for this pattern, they are nice to have. And so the first thing I'm going to start by saying is an embroidery hoop. So embroidery hoops are a great way to keep the tension on your fabric really nice and even, hold your fabric down tight as you are doing your stitching. I almost always stitch with an embroidery hoop or a scroll frame of some kind. There are a couple different styles. They do make them out of plastic and out of wood. I prefer the wooden ones, but it is truly personal preference. I know a lot of people who only use the plastic ones. It's up to you. If you are making my sampler pattern on the 14 count Aida cloth, a 4-inch hoop is going to be just the right size for your finished piece. I think they cost like $2 to $3 at the craft store. So if you want to add one of these, it's also a great way to finish your piece off when you're done. Another optional, but for me, necessary supply is a needle minder. And that's because, like I mentioned earlier, I do tend to lose needles if I don't have a needle minder handy. And when I say handy, I mean I literally have to have them, like, one with every single project that I'm currently working on, which at the moment is many, many projects. So I have a lot of needle minders around. They're not very expensive. So how they work is they are 2 magnets. One is going to go on top of your fabric, the other is going to go underneath your fabric, and they're just going to hold onto it like that. And so when you need to set your needle down, it just grabs onto the magnet there, like that, and it hangs onto it for you so you don't drop it or lose it if you need to get up and walk away from your project for a moment or anything like that. So for me, these are an absolute lifesaver necessity. You can find them online, you can find them in your local craft store. They have a lot of really, really cute ones nowadays. This was a game changer for me. I've lost so many fewer needles now that I have started using these. Another thing I wanted to talk about that, again, is optional, not necessary, is bobbins. So once you take the wrappers off of your DMC floss, it's very, very easy for them to get tangled and knotted up and things like that. So bobbins are a great way to keep everything organized. So they look like this. They can be made out of plastic or cardboard. And up in the top corner, you can either write the number of the floss in Sharpie, or they actually even make these little stickers with all the little numbers on them for you. So you just choose the correct sticker and you wind your floss around the bobbin, and you can store them that way. That way they don't get tangled and messed up. They're a little easier to keep organized and find. There are other options as well. If you don't like bobbins, there are things called floss drops. There are also floss bows. Some people just keep each color in a little snack-sized Ziploc bag with a Sharpie writing the number on it. There are a ton of different ways to organize your supplies. I just happen to really like bobbins. So if you need a way to organize your floss so that it doesn't get tangled up, I recommend looking into some type of organizational system, even if it's just picking up a few cardboard bobbins from the store, writing the number on in pen or Sharpie, and wrapping your floss around them that way. The last thing you're gonna need, again, is technically optional, but I do think that it is important, especially if you are working with a paper pattern, is gonna be a highlighter. And that's so that as we stitch these different little blocks, you can use a highlighter to color them in, so you can help keep track of where you're at in the pattern and what portion of the pattern you're working on. So I do find that when I'm working with a paper pattern, a highlighter is a necessity for me. That being said, you don't have to use one if you don't want to. There are also virtual ways for you to keep track of your patterns and what portion you're on. There are programs that you can download to your phone or your iPad or your Android device, like Pattern Keeper, like Markup RXP, things like that. in order to keep track of your patterns. So my pattern is mostly Pattern Keeper friendly. I will say Pattern Keeper and Markup RXP, for that matter, they do not handle backstitching well. They don't know how to do it. So you can see the bulk of the pattern, this inside portion, on Pattern Keeper or Markup RXP, but this outer border that we're going to be doing at the end with the backstitching is not going to show up in those programs, unfortunately. So like I said, I do recommend printing out the pattern and having a paper version of it, even if it's just for the end as we work on the backstitching portion. So just a reminder that all you technically need to get started is a pattern, fabric, floss, and a needle. If you have those 4 things, you do not need any of the other things that I talked about. Like I said, those are just nice optional supplies. Emphasis on the optional. You can get all of this stuff from your local craft store for about $20 to $25. If you are going to be doing the full sampler with us where we have the beads, you are also going to want to pick up a tube of beads if you don't have any at home already. With the beads, I would say this will probably run you about $25. Without the beads, it'll probably be about $20 plus tax. You will absolutely have a ton of extra floss, so choose colors that you like or choose colors that might go with another pattern that you want to do in the future. Your needles you're going to be able to use over and over. The Aida cloth, you are going to have extra Aida cloth. They do not sell 7x7-inch squares of Aida, so you will have extra. Just cut off what you need for this project. You will have extra, and you will have a ton of extra beads as well. The only thing that won't really be reusable is the hoop, if you choose to finish it off in a hoop like I have. So like this is done, I can hang this on the wall directly in the hoop. So obviously I cannot reuse the hoop. But other than that, everything else can really continue to be used for future projects as well. Once you have those few supplies, we are ready to get started. So the next video is going to be prepping our fabric and getting started with our first stitches. So thank you so much for coming and learning about what materials that you need to get started with cross stitch, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!